Welcome back to Cheshire and the twists and turns of the Oulton Park International Circuit. We've got our second and final race of the day coming up for the Porsche Club Motorsports Championship with Pirelli. It's round 8 of their championship season. The grid for this one is based on their second fastest qualifying times from earlier on today, albeit we have had an amended grid issued because of that, of course, start line accident earlier on today, which has taken 4 cars out of this restart, plus a 5th has subsequently retired. Simon Clark starts from pole position with Chris Dyer alongside, and it's Ed Hayes and Mark McAleer that line up there on row number 2. Row 3 of the grid is Richard Baston and Jamie Callender, who celebrates his birthday today, on the 3rd row of the grid. And row 4 of the grid, it's James Cayley and Bill Cayley, a family affair, on row number 4. Row 5 of the grid is Jake McAleer. Watch out for him because he's qualified out of position, if you ask me. And alongside is Jim Bryan, with row 6 of the grid being Darren Lebet and 28, which is Jessica Wilkinson. Angus Archer and Jason Brown are next up, with Paul Seagrave and Julian Morris on the penultimate row of the grid. And Cole Hazelton starts on his own at the back. So there are 5 cars that are absent from those that qualified this morning. We saw that 4-car start line incident. That means that Pete Morris, Shiraz Khan, Pete Evans and Andrew Porter, who were all out when the red flags came out, their car's too badly damaged to even restart this one. And the other car that's withdrawn is Paul Simpson, who's came and dropped to 10th position in the latter stages of the race. But whatever it was, he saw the checkered flag, but the car has been withdrawn as well. So clearly some problems for the reigning champion, overall champion from last year. So Simon Clark leads them round. We saw Jake McAleer win the race earlier on today, his first win of the championship season. Well, he's got some work to do from 9th on the grid for this one, whereas Ed Hayes, who finished second to him in the race earlier on today, only starts on the 2nd row of the grid. So the car to our left with the white and the light green and the grey flashes is Simon Clark. Chris Dyer's car is the red car with the white stripe right the way down the centre, in the hands of the former Class 2 and overall champion from some years ago. What was it, 2010, he secured the championship. Row 2 of the grid, it's the light blue car you can just see, which is Ed Hayes, alongside Mark McAleer's car, which is the car that has the silver front to it and the black wings to either side. So I think we've got pretty much all of the cars lined up there. 22 cars qualified, only 17 on the grid for this one. You can still see the cement dust down on the start-finish line as a result of that 4-car accident earlier on, and the tyre marks also on the left-hand side up towards the pit wall. So 25 minutes on the clock. Red lights are on. Simon Clark and Chris Dyer on the front row of the grid, the 997 and the Cayman. And it looks like it's a good launch for the man from the outside of the front row of the grid, outside the 2nd row of the grid, which is Mark McAleer, who's going to come through. And is he going to take up the lead in the race? Yes, he is. So from 4th on the grid, Mark McAleer leads as they head round through Oulton Corner for the first time. Brilliant start from him. I thought it was a good start from Chris Dyer and Ed Hayes, but Mark McAleer really got the launch and has picked up the picked up the lead of the race in the early stages from Simon Clark in 2nd position. And 3rd is going to be another gold car that got a great launch. It's going to be James Cayley, who's there in 3rd place at the wheel of the number 11 997. So the 997's getting a really good launch in the early stages of this one. Yes, Julian Morris at the tail end of the field, picking up a few places actually. He started 16th and he's managed to pick a few off as well. But it's Mark McAleer from Simon Clark, from James Cayley, then it's Chris Dyer, who, despite not starting poorly at all, has lost 2 places. And the front 2 look as though they've just got a little bit of daylight between themselves and then James Cayley. Ed Hayes is there in 5th place, and Richard Baston, I think, is there in 6th place. We'll pick out who's leading the AM category at the end of this lap as well, which is for the Class 2 cars. Down in towards the braking area for the Hislop chicane. Mark McAleer 4th on the grid, up to the lead of the race. He'd be more than pleased with that. The man who has had 1 win so far this season. Mark finished earlier on today 3rd spot of the podium, whereas his son won the race overall. Cole Hazelton circulates down towards the tail end of the field. He had a good battle earlier on as well, didn't he? Carl was busy fighting away with Jessica Wilkinson and Jason Brown. So out of Druids, underneath the Warwick Bridge, they'll thread their way. And up towards the conclusion of the first lap of the race. It was a slightly shortened race, wasn't it, earlier on? It was a 20-minute race because of the delay, because of the red flag. So we should be able to squeeze out maybe another 2 or 3 laps out of this one. Make it something like a 13, 14, 15 lap race. Mark McAleer leads lap number 1 over the start-finish line. He'll go. Richard Baston looking to squeeze his way through and ahead of Jake McAleer, which he manages to do. So that was a change for position. Richard Baston up into 6th place. Jake McAleer is there in 7th. Whilst Father Mark McAleer leads the way at this stage. And the top 4 have broken away a little bit now, haven't they? So top 4 and maybe 5. There goes number 80, which is Bill Cayley. His car had a bit of damage to it earlier on, with bits of bodywork dangling from one side and the other. Looks as though the team have managed to tidy that up as the race leaders head in towards Shell Oils. Mark McAleer leading, Simon Clark, James Cayley from Chris Dyer, and then the next of the cars is going to be Ed Hayes. So it's the top 5 before we start to see a little gap. Launching over the curbs through the Britain's chicane. You can stay on the red and white bits, but you need to stay off those darker green painted bits. There's number 74, Jim Bryan. He had a good race earlier on as well, didn't he? He was involved in some Titanic battles further down through the order. His car is running in 9th place at the moment. Bill Cayley just ahead of him. And going straight on down into towards the braking area for Hislops was Ed Hayes. Now, he was running in 5th position. He can't gain an advantage, so he's got to wait for a gap in the traffic and feed his way back out. And I think he's fed his way back out, no longer in something like 5th. I think he's dropped down to 9th, potentially, by the time he was able to rejoin. By the time he'd weaved his way through, yeah, there's Jim Bryan. And in the background of the shot, yeah, is Ed Hayes. So he's going to drop down into 9th place. So that really has cost him quite dear. Now, Jake McAleer is also looking this time to try and get up the inside of Richard Baston, heading in towards Lodge Corner to gain a place. Mark McAleer leads, Simon Clark from James Cayley, then Chris Dyer. And then in the background of the shot, it is, Jake McAleer, who is now up into 5th position. He's got his lights ablaze, gained a place over Richard Baston on that lap. And because of the problems that befell Ed Hayes down at the braking area for the Hislop chicane, he's gained a 2nd place. So Jake started that lap in 7th. He finishes it in 5th place, car number 114, whilst his father, car number 14, leads the way. But doesn't lead it by a great deal from Simon Clark, the man who has gone well in his championship in the last couple of seasons. Has been an overall champion in the past, as has Mark McAleer, who leads the way. Now, Bill Cayley had his hands full as well. I think Bill Cayley's gained a place as well. Yeah, he's gone through and passed number 85, Richard Baston, as well. So that's another place lost there for the black 996. And he might lose a further place as well, because he's now got Jim Bryan at the wheel of the Goya car right behind him, the number 74 machine. So Richard Baston having a poor lap and a bit here, really. He's coming under pressure from the number 74 car, which again leaps over the curbs. So 2 fighting for the lead of the race, a pair fighting over 3rd and 4th, with Jake McAleer looking to try and make it a trio, fighting over 3rd, 4th and 5th if he can, because I think he's closing up on the pair ahead. Jake claimed the race win earlier on today, which is his 1st win of the season. He also set the fastest lap in the race as well. What's going on in Class 2? Because I haven't really picked up on that at the moment. Number 52, Darren Labette, is leading that from the number 56 car, which is going to be the car of Jason Brown. That's the gold machine, so we'll try and keep an eye on what's going on in Class 2. But for the lead of the race overall, Mark McAleer is not having it all his own way, because Simon Clark's just not going away, is he? Simon takes a nice wide sweep in towards Lodge Corner to try and get good momentum on the exit of it. Over the start-finish line go the pair. So it's 997 from 997, potentially from another 997, because Jake McAleer gets up the inside of Chris Dyer, heading in towards Old Hall Corner, and makes it now 4 997s inside the top 4. Leading Cayman sits there next up, and then it's another Cayman, which will be Bill Cayley, who completes the top 6 at the moment. First of the 997s, I think, will be Richard Baston, who's down there in 7th place. So Chris Dyer, 2010 overall champion. When he won the championship, he was racing in Class 2 at that occasion. He repeated that feat by claiming the Class 2 championship, but missed out in the overall championship in 2011. Jake McAleer also setting, now he's gained another place. He has also picked up the fastest lap of the race with a 1 minute 50.290 that time through. That's still about a second shy of the fastest lap from the race earlier on today, but remember, it was a brand new set of tyres they were able to bolt on for qualifying in race 1. They've still got those same tyres on for race 2 here. Now, Simon Clark, I thought, was a little bit closer to Mark McAleer for the lead of the race, but by the time they head in towards Hislops, the gap looks about the same, actually, between the pair of them. James Cayley still not that far away, sitting there in 3rd place, but is now starting to feel the pressure, not from the red Cayman anymore of Chris Dyer. It will now be Jake McAleer that he's starting to feel the pressure from, as they head up towards Druids, with still plenty of time on the clock. Just under 18 minutes remain in this final race for them today. They next head off to Anglesey on the coastal circuit, which will be on the 13th of July, and then it's up to Croft in North Yorkshire. I don't think those are being streamed, so I think the next time we'll bring you some streamed races from the Porsche Club Motorsport Championship with Pirelli will probably be Donington Park on the 15th of September, and also their championship finale takes place in October. Now, Jake McAleer is going to go round the outside. Is he with James Cayley to pick up third place? Yes, he does. And stays within the confines of the circuit, so he must have got a really good run coming out of Lodge Corner. And Jake McAleer picks up third place now, the race one winner. So he really is looking good value here this weekend, Jake McAleer. He's had a few thirds throughout the course of this season, but that win earlier on has given him extra momentum and the extra impetus to work his way through the order. You bear in mind, he came from 9th on the grid. We've only done 4 laps completed, and he's now up into the podium spots in reality at the start of lap number 5. Now, what can he do about closing in on Simon Clark? That will please his father if he can start to hassle the car in second place, because it would start to remove him from his rear view mirror a little bit. So Dad leads the way, Mark McAleer, then it's Simon Clark, then it's son Jake McAleer. James Cayley is the first of the Cayley family, running down there in what will be 4th position, and then we've got the battle for the lead of the Caymans in reality, and that will be the battle for 5th and 6th place. All of the cars run in the same class, Class 1 at the front, Class 2 the AM class further down through the order, which is still being headed by Darren Lebet as they come over the start-finish line, by about half a second from Jason Brown last time through. So we've almost had the first 10 minutes of the race now, and Mark McAleer still leading the way. He might have started 4th on the grid, but the good launch saw him through into the lead, and he's not relinquished it as yet, but the pressure is starting to build again, isn't it? Simon Clark not too far away, then son Jake McAleer as they head through to conclude another lap. That's now 5 laps completed, and in 3rd place Jake McAleer, a new fastest lap of the race again that time through, 1 minute 50.155 from him. Still about 1.2 seconds shy of his fastest lap from earlier on today, but he's pushing hard, and he's now starting to apply a bit more pressure to the car in 2nd place, which is the number 23 in the hands of Simon Clark. So the Form Evo Clark Racing 997 sitting there in 2nd place, being ganged up on, you could argue, by the McAleer family. And Jake McAleer got really close towards the tail end of Simon Clark in towards the braking area for Shell Oil's corner there. So the top 3 pretty much equidistantly spread, but very little daylight between all 3 of them in towards the braking area for Britons. We've now got 3 cars fighting away for what will be 4th, 5th and 6th place. James Cayley under attack from Chris Dyer, and then Bill Cayley. So the McAleer family 1st and 3rd, the Cayley family 4th and 6th at the moment, but all of them involved in 3-car battles. So there's James Cayley, there's Chris Dyer, there's Bill Cayley. So yeah, one at the front of the first trio and at the back of the first trio, and then another family affair at the front of the second trio and at the back of the second trio. So it's McAleer from Clark from McAleer, Cayley from Dyer from Cayley. So this is lap number 6 that they're about to conclude this time through, and Simon Clark probably about as close as he's been to Mark McAleer, but he needs to be, because he's getting the hurry up from Jake McAleer sitting there in 3rd position. What's going on with the trio further back as well? We'll try and keep an eye towards that as over the start-finish line come the top 3. Further back it looks as though Bill Cayley is trying to get an overlap on Chris Dyer, but isn't going to be close enough, so it'll still be James Cayley from Chris Dyer from Bill Cayley, 4th, 5th and 6th places. And in Class 2, it's still Darren Lebet, number 52, that leads the way, but only now just by 1/10 of a second from the gold car, which is going to be Jason Brown, number 56. They're really having a ding-dong battle for the lead of Class 2 further down through the order, the AM class. The man who secured AM class honours earlier on, Jamie Callender, on his birthday, has picked up a 5-second penalty for track limits, I'm afraid, in this one. And he's already 4th in the class. That's going to drop him further down through the order on corrected times. So 13 minutes remain. We're almost at the halfway point of the race. Mark McAleer has led, he's led every lap. What he hasn't led is about the first 100 metres, something like that. when the lights went out, he had to propel himself from 4th on the grid to pick up the lead at Oulton corner. But having done so, he's just remained in it all of the time. So they start to head in towards the braking area for the Knickerbrook chicane. Still got James Cayley fighting away with the 2 Caymans, which is going to be Chris Dyer in the red one, followed by Bill Cayley that sits behind. One of the Cayley family in the 997, the other one at the wheel of the Cayman. Lighter car, the Cayman, as I mentioned earlier on, but has less power, whereas the 997s are heavier cars but have more power. But in terms of performance, there is very little to choose between the 996, the 997 or the Cayman in terms of this championship, and that's the way the regulations are designed. So 12 minutes to go, 7 laps about to be completed. Mark McAleer still not getting away at all from Simon Clark, who cannot get away at all from Jake McAleer. What's happening in the background? James Cayley, is he travelling any quicker than the 3 ahead of him? No, he's lapping a little bit slower than the leading trio. And then we've got another trio thereafter. This is going to be Richard Bast and Jim Bryant. And Richard Bast and Jim Bryant, and then the recovering Ed Hayes, isn't it? At the wheel of the number 32 car. So that will be a trio then fighting over 7th, 8th and 9th. Julian Morris will be next up on his own in 10th position. So they've managed to sort themselves out into groups of 3 at the moment. So Ed Hayes arguably quicker than Jim Bryant, but of course lost that time earlier on when he dropped down through the order, having finished 2nd in the race earlier on today. He'll hope that he can try and thread his way further past if he can, but nothing doing as he heads up towards Shell Oils. And then can he just get the undercut coming out? He can't quite make it through, I don't think. He's going to have a try, and he's right the way alongside. And they go side by side through the unnamed right-hander, but Jim Bryant hangs on to it by the time they get towards the braking area for Britons. So Ed Hayes is going to have to find a moment somewhere else to try and squeeze his way through. And squeeze was very much the word there, because there wasn't a great deal of daylight between the wing mirrors on the respective 996 and the Cayman. So in towards the braking area for Hislops. 10 minutes remain. Ed Hayes desperate to try and work his way through somewhere if he can. But Jim Bryan having none of it, and now Jim Bryan turning his attention to Richard Baston, who sits just up the road and ideally would like to try and gain a position if he can. Jim Bryan sitting there in 9th place, and just ahead of him is the car of Richard Baston, who started 5th on the grid and has struggled a little bit in the early stages, lost that pace earlier on, or lost a few places earlier on, and just can't seem to at the moment get things back. So he's running in 7th place and is still under pressure from that. Now Ed Hayes up the inside of Jim Bryan this time through. Surely the Cayman's going to go through. Yes, it does. Up the inside. Jim Bryan tries to fight back on the exit of the corner, but realises that's not quite going to work. So that now means that Ed Hayes gains at least 1 place. He is now up into 8th position. Jim Bryan drops down into 9th place. And even with that little squabble, it didn't allow Richard Baston to get away at all. So he is only just up the road from Ed Hayes, having taken 1 place. He now ideally wants to try and grab a 2nd. It's very much on the bumper of the 996 through Island Bend. He's not going to try anything as they head up towards Shell Oils. Brakes that little bit later. Takes a slightly later apex to try and get on the power a little bit earlier coming out. It's particularly quick, the Cayman, last time coming out of that section of the circuit, because that gave him a little sniff of an opportunity to sneak through and past Jim Bryan. It wasn't successful, but it was a good opportunity. And Ed Hayes will look to try and carve another one if he can somewhere. So they're on lap number 9 currently. We've got under 9 minutes of the race remaining. And we've got a few more cars out there as Ed Hayes goes off again down at Hislop chicane, and he's going to have to leapfrog across the circuit. And I was just about to say, as a few cars start to put their windscreen wipers on, I do wonder whether Ed Hayes was just caught out with the changeable conditions there. We could see Julian Morris with his wiper on. We could see that Jim Bryan had his wiper on. Now, for the lead of Class 2, we've had a shuffle. No longer is it Darren Lebet that's in the lead of the Class, the number 52 car. He's now been caught by Jamie Callender. Now, Jamie Callender has a 5-second penalty, so Darren Lebet might be unaware of that, but ideally he still wants to finish ahead of him if he can. For the overall lead of the race, we've still got Mark McAleer clinging on to it from Simon Clark and Jamie McAleer. but it certainly looks as though all of a sudden the clouds have darkened a little bit. The skies are greyer and windscreen wipers are coming on, which does suggest it is at least spitting out there on circuit. No real signs of it on the start-finish line to that degree, but certainly out there at the far reaches of the circuit, round through Island Bend and Shell Oils, it certainly looks as though drivers are having to wipe the windscreen to make sure they've got clear visibility. And the top three are absolutely rooted together with 7.5 minutes to go. Nothing in it still. So we've got, what, a quarter of the race still remaining. Nothing to choose between the top three. Over the crest there will go at Hilltop. Jake McAleer weaving around to try and distract Simon Clark. The order still remains the same though. Jake McAleer still with that fastest lap of the race, which has not been bettered and now in these worsening conditions is unlikely to be improved upon. Lap times haven't dropped that much. Jake McAleer was about 3/4 of a second slower on the previous lap than he was relative to his fastest lap of the race. I just wonder whether on this lap, if lap times drop off a bit more, it'll tell you that at that far reaches of the circuit, it maybe is getting just a little bit trickier out there. So underneath the Warwick Bridge, we've still got James Cayley, Chris Dyer and Bill Cayley all fighting away in the background. Remember, all of these cars are on slicks as well, so if the rain does come down to a large degree, it could make it tricky out there. I think it's just a few spots more than anything at this stage. Albeit lap times, yeah, about 2 seconds slower now than they were a couple of laps ago. So things are deteriorating out there. Mark McAleer still hanging on to it, but Simon Clark trying to get an overlap this time as they head along the avenue. The brake lights come on because he knows he's not quite going to make it and the door was going to close. So the Pirelli slick tyres now probably not ideally suited to these tricky conditions. The good thing is they've still got plenty of heat in them, so you can run around on a dampening track on a slick tyre as long as it's got heat in it. If you then start to have to slow up so that you can't generate the heat because you haven't got the friction through the corners, and that's when the tyres then become pretty much unusable. Trying to drive around on a cold, slick tyre on a wet track becomes impossible. So we've still got 5 minutes of this to go. It still looks like it's just spits of rain at the moment, but the lap times are just dropping off a little bit, and more windscreen wipers are coming on every now and again. Leading trio still remain the same. Mark McAleer looking to try and make it win number 2 of the season if he can. He finished third earlier on today. It's the first time he's had a third place so far this season. He's had 3 seconds. His win was at the opening round of the championship at Donington Park on the 21st of April, and he's not had a win since then. So he's been a couple of months of waiting, not the best part of 9 weeks since his last win, and he's still got work to do here in the final 5 minutes of it, because Simon Clark has been an ever-present danger there in second place, and he's still just not going away. So Jake McAleer can't really help out because he's trying to attack as much as he can. I think the circuit is still getting damper as well. There's a few more umbrellas going up in the grandstands and around the circuit. You can see a bit more of a shine on the tarmac now. And as they start to, every corner, every lap is a trip into the unknown because the conditions just change. You get to one corner and think, well, it'll be the same as the previous lap, and it isn't. It's either got better or it's got worse. You just don't know until you get there. Now, here is Bill Cayley up the inside of Chris Dyer. Can he squeeze his way through? Yes, he can. So that is up into 5th position now for Bill Cayley. Chris Dyer drops down into 6th place. So that's the Dyer family that are now running nose to tail. Can we get the McAleer family running nose to tail? We'll have to wait and see, because Jake will need to get through and ahead of Simon Clark, and that's not an easy task in itself. Richard Baston, Jim Bryan, Ed Hayes, Julian Morris all start to descend down in towards Cascades. This is going to be the 4-car train now for 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th position. So it's 3 for the lead, it's 3 for 4th, and then it's 4 cars fighting over 7th through to 10th place. So they've all managed to get themselves together in batches for this particular race. And in Class 2, Jamie Callender now leads on the road in Class 2. That's the number 12 car, but he has got a time penalty, a 5-second penalty, which means on corrected times he wouldn't hang on to the class. It would be the gold-coloured car, number 56 of Jason Brown, that would pick up the win from 52, which is going to be the car of Darren Lebet. So number 12 might lead it on the road, but won't lead it on corrected times, I'm afraid to say, with 3 minutes to go. All because of Jamie Callender transgressing those circuit limits earlier on in the race. Say it's a 5-second penalty. Probably ought to just double check that it is. It tends to be to start with. No, it's a 15-second penalty for something. So it might be on the totting up procedure of track limits, but it's a 15-second penalty for Jamie Callender. So he really is going to drop through the order on corrected times. 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th all start to head up Clay Hill. Richard Baston at the front of that little quartet of cars, followed by Jim Bryant, then the blue machine, the Cayman in the hands of Ed Hayes, and then Julian Morris still trying to play catch-up to get himself fully up onto terms with the three that lie ahead, but he's not that far away. And of course, when they start to squabble, it will allow them all just to close up a little bit more. You can see them moving around under braking. Jim Bryan really desperate to try and anchor the car up, got a little bit sideways, lost a little bit of time under braking relative to Richard Baston. He's going to try and close up again as they head over the start-finish line this time through. And from the occasional flicker of the windscreen wipers, it's a continual flicker of windscreen wipers now, which tells you, yeah, conditions are gradually getting worse. Now we've got the Cayley family wheel to wheel. James Cayley looking to try and hang on to the place. Bill Cayley looking to try and squeeze his way through. What have we got? 1:40 remaining on the clock. So they're on their penultimate lap of the race this time through. So one more tour of the Oulton Park International Circuit, and Bill Cayley's made it through. He's gone through and ahead of James Cayley. He was in 6th place a few laps ago, got past Chris Dyer, hung on for a few more laps and then goes through to gain another place. Jim Bryan has also, by the look of things, managed to fend off the aspirations of the car that sits behind him, which is Ed Hayes, who still can't squeeze the Cayman up another spot. Considering that he's had 2 mistakes down at Hislops, one of which cost him a raft of places, and then another off last time through with nearly a half spin. He's still running in 9th place, Ed Hayes, but it's a race of what could have been, having finished 2nd earlier on today and started 3rd on the grid for this one. He'll be less happy finishing in 9th position. So with 50 seconds to go, onto the final lap of the race should come Mark McAleer. He has led every lap so far. So he led by the time they'd exited the first corner and got down to Cascades, having started 4th on the grid. But is he going to lead at the end of the most important one, which is the one they're about to start this time through? So through Old Hall Corner, Mark McAleer still leading the way. Looks as though that windscreen glass, or the left-hand side door glass, is just starting to pop out a little bit on Mark McAleer's car. Yeah, it's a definite bit of daylight. So the Perspex, I think, has just popped out a little bit on the passenger side window on that car. Bit of extra ventilation. That's all. Won't be giving him any problems at all. It's no sign of it flapping around, so it's not a cause for concern, but only just spotted that for the first time as they head up towards Shell Oils for the final time this time through. Simon Clark has still not given up on his aspirations to try and claim a win if he can, and if he could, that would be his 4th win of the year so far. But Mark McAleer wants his 2nd win of the year so far. Tail end got a little bit waggy heading through Britain's that time through, but I think he's still got a good enough drive off the corner so as to prevent Simon Clark from trying anything, and he has, yeah, certainly enough daylight as they head in towards Hislops this time through. And for Mark McAleer, loads of experience racing Porsches of various types over the years. I think he first appeared in the Porsche 924 Championship, which was a hugely popular and very competitive championship back in the 1990s. Mark McAleer, I'm sure that's where he first cut his teeth, and he is on course for potentially his 2nd win of the championship season. He has so far this year failed to finish off the podium in any single race. He had that 3rd earlier on, and every other podium step has been either a 2nd or a 3rd. I think conditions are deteriorating again as the checkered flag will come out this time through, but Mark McAleer is going to hang on and claim his 2nd win of the 2024 season in the Porsche Club Motorsport Championship with Pirelli. Simon Clark finishes in 2nd place, Jake McAleer in 3rd, Bill Cayley in 4th, and look how much he's pulled away from the cars he'd overtaken. Chris Dyer also manages to finish in 5th place, ahead of James Cayley, who dropped to 6th in the worsening conditions, so he didn't enjoy it. Richard Baston still looking to try and hang on to 7th place, despite the close attentions of Jim Bryan, who is going to try everything he can towards the line, but is just going to come up a little bit short, I think. So Richard Baston should finish in 7th place. He does, from Jim Bryan in 8th place. Julian Morris is there in 9th, and Ed Hayes finishes in 10th in the end, having lost out to the number 10 car on that final lap. And who is going to win Class 2? Because that will be the next of the cars over the start-finish line. There goes Darren Lebet, just up the road from him is Paul Seagrave, who is a Class 1 car, I think is Paul. Yes, he is. So it looks as though the win is going to go on the road in Class 2, the AM Class, the way of the number 12 car, but on corrected times, number 56 is going to be Jason Brown will pick it up, and I think that should be the first win of the season for Jason Brown in Class 2, the AM Class. So Jamie Callender claimed the win earlier on today, the number 12 car, but he's got a 15-second penalty. So on corrected times, that's sadly going to drop him down through the order. So a bittersweet birthday, the win earlier on, and a poorer finish today because of that 15-second penalty. So for the first time this season, the number 56 car, Jason Brown for Ignite Motorsport, picks up the win in Class 2, which is the AM Class. And then second in the AM Class should be Darren Labette. And third in the AM Class will be number 70, which is Angus Archer. So Jamie Callender will drop down to something like fourth in the class as a result of that 15-second penalty having been applied. In fact, does he drop further down? No, Jessica Wilkinson will not gain the place over him, so he will finish fourth in Class 2, the AM Class. Jess Wilkinson will be fifth in Class 2, 16th overall, and Carl Hazelton is the last of the cars about to take the checker flag now, the number 24 Boxster. He comes through over the start-finish line, and he'll be classified as 17th and 6th in the AM Class, or Class 2 as it's known. So all of the cars through. That is our final Porsche race of the day. So let's confirm the results for you. Mark McAleer claims the win, his second of the season, but by less than half a second from Simon Clark, with Jake McAleer, his son, finishing in third place. Bill Cayley finished in fourth, ahead of Chris Dyer in fifth, and James Cayley dropped to sixth in the end. Richard Bayston was there in seventh place, Jim Bryan was eighth, and Julian Morris got ahead and up to ninth in the closing stages, which dropped Ed Hayes down outside and into the bottom of the top 10. In 11th place, the win in Class 2, the AM Class, went the way for the first time this season of Jason Brown. Paul Seagrave finished in 12th place. Darren Labette was 13th, second in Class 2, the AM Class, and Angus Archer was there in 14th. Jamie Callender, with that 15-second penalty, dropped to 4th in the class in the end and finished in 15th place, with Jessica Wilkinson and Carl Hazelton being the final two finishers in our last race today for the Porsche Club Motorsport Championship with Pirelli. They'll be back out on circuit on the 13th of July at Anglesey. They'll also head to Croft in August, but we'll be back live streaming their September event at Donington Park. So from everybody here at Oulton Park, thanks for joining us this weekend. Till next time, it's goodbye.